The rain hammered the roof like it was trying to drown out my heartbeat, but nothing could silence the words I'd just unleashed into the humid air of our shared bedroom. Jordan, I love you. Not like a brother, but more. I've always loved you more. His eyes widened in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, the foster family photo on the wall mocking us with our frozen teenage smiles. And then he was gone, bolting through the door without a single word, vanishing into the storm-swept night of that Midwestern summer, leaving me shattered on the floor with the echo of my confession as my only company. 10 years later, I still woke up some nights tasting that rain, feeling the ghost of his hand brushing mine as he turned away. I'd built a life in Chicago, far from the cornfields of Iowa, where we'd grown up as mismatched foster kids clinging to each other like lifelines. At 28, I ran a small graphic design firm, surrounded by friends who knew my story but never pried too deep into the wound that never quite healed. Jordan's disappearance had been ruled a runaway case. No foul play, just a scared 18-year-old kid with a backpack and a bus ticket to nowhere. Our foster parents, the Harrisons, had grieved quietly, blaming themselves for not seeing the cracks in our bond. But I knew the truth. I'd cracked it wide open with those words, and he'd fled because of me. It was a crisp October afternoon when he reappeared, like a character stepping off the page of the half-written novel I'd abandoned years ago. I was at my favorite coffee shop on Clark Street, sketching logos on my tablet, when the bell above the door chimed and a voice, deeper now, but unmistakable, said, "Alex? Is that really you?" I looked up, and there he was, Jordan, taller, broader-shouldered, with the same piercing blue eyes framed by faint lines of experience, dressed in a tailored wool coat that screamed big city success. My stylus clattered to the table. "Jordan," I whispered, the name tasting like forgiveness and fury all at once. He slid into the seat across from me without asking, his smile tentative, like he was testing fragile ice. "I had to see you. After all this time. Do you ever think about that night? Did you? Did you mean it?" The question hung between us, heavier than the steam rising from my untouched latte. How do you answer something like that when the person who broke your heart is sitting there, looking at you like you're the only anchor in his storm? I wanted to scream, to demand why he'd left me to pick up the pieces alone, but instead, I nodded slowly. Every damn day. His face crumpled for a split second. Then he reached across the table, his fingers grazing mine. Just a whisper of touch that sent electricity racing up my arm. "I need to explain. Can we talk? Really talk?" I should have said no. Walked out. But the pull was still there, that invisible thread we'd woven as kids, unbreakable even after a decade of silence. We ended up at my apartment, a third-floor walk-up in Wrigleyville with exposed brick walls and posters of indie bands we'd once dreamed of seeing together. The place smelled like fresh basil from the windowsill herb garden and the faint citrus of my cologne, nothing like the musty farmhouse we'd shared. Jordan paced the living room while I poured us whiskey neat, the amber liquid catching the late afternoon light. "I didn't run because I hated you," he started, his voice rough around the edges. "God, Alex, I ran because I was terrified. Of myself. Of what you made me feel." He stopped, running a hand through his hair, and I saw the boy he'd been. The one who'd defended me from bullies at school, who'd shared secrets under the covers during thunderstorms. But this man carried scars I didn't recognize, a thin white line on his jaw, shadows under his eyes that spoke of nights like mine. He told me fragments at first, like puzzle pieces he wasn't sure fit. After leaving that night, he'd hitchhiked to St. Louis, crashed on couches, worked odd jobs, bartending, construction, anything to keep moving. He'd changed his last name informally, cut ties with everyone, built a new life in New York as a financial analyst. Successful on paper, corner office, suits that cost more than our old foster home's mortgage. But hollow. I dated women, tried to prove something to myself, he admitted, staring at the floor. But it never stuck. And every time I closed my eyes, it was your face. That confession, it cracked me open. My throat tightened. Was this his way of saying he'd felt it too? Or just guilt dressed up as revelation? I set my glass down harder than I meant to. "You left me a note? A call? Anything? I thought I'd killed us, Jordan. The Harrisons, they whispered about it for years, like I was the family curse." He winced, sinking onto the couch. "I know. I was a coward. Our town. You remember how it was. Pastor Reynolds preaching fire and brimstone every Sunday. Kids at school calling us the orphan freaks. I couldn't face it. Couldn't face you looking at me like that again, because part of me wanted to say it back. The room spun a little from the whiskey, or maybe from the weight of it all. I sat beside him, close enough to feel the heat off his body, but not touching. And now? What changed? He turned to me, eyes searching mine. I got tired of running. Saw your firm's website last month, Alex Harper Designs. Proud of you. And I had to know if that love was still there, if you ever meant it, or if time buried it. That night, we didn't sleep. We talked until the city lights blurred into dawn, unspooling the lost years like a tangled reel of film. He spoke of the friends he'd made in New York, a diverse crew that included his roommate, a drag queen named Miko who taught him to question everything. I'd built my own circle here. Lena, my best friend and business partner, a fierce lesbian who'd pulled me out of post-Jordan depression with bad karaoke and better advice. And Theo, a trans guy from my support group, who reminded me daily that vulnerability wasn't weakness. But as Jordan's stories wove into mine, I felt the old ache soften, replaced by something sharper, hope, laced with fear. What if this was just a pit stop for him? A nostalgic detour before he vanished again? By morning, we'd agreed to take it slow. Coffee dates turned to walks along Lake Michigan, where the wind whipped our laughter into the waves. He met Lena first, over dim sum in Chinatown. She eyed him like a hawk, her chopsticks pausing midair. So, you're the infamous ghost brother. Heard him once, and I'll bury you in Lake Michigan myself. Jordan laughed, genuine and warm, promising he was here to stay. Theo was next, at a queer poetry slam in Boys Town. Jordan clapped hardest for a piece about reclaimed family, and later, in the alley outside, he admitted to me. That could have been us, writing our own ending. I squeezed his hand then, the first real touch since his return, and it felt like coming home. But shadows lingered. A week in, my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Harrison, heard rumors. Is it true? Our boy home. Panic flickered in my chest. Old habits from a town where love like ours was whispered about in church basements. Jordan saw the color drain from my face. Tell me, he urged, and I did, bracing for the flood of memories. The Harrisons had been kind, in their limited way, taking us in after my parents' car crash and his abandonment by a drug-addled mom. But kindness had limits. No funny business, under their roof, as Mr. Harrison put it during our teen years, his Bible quotes a subtle warning. We'd hidden our closeness well, but that night, it all spilled out. Jordan's jaw tightened. I owe them an apology. Us. We drove back to Iowa the next weekend, the highway stretching like a vein between past and present. The farmhouse looked smaller, weathered, but the porch swing still creaked invitingly. Mrs. Harrison enveloped us in hugs that smelled of lavender and regret, tears streaming as she pulled Jordan inside. Mr. Harrison hung back, his handshake firm but his eyes wary. Over pot roast and apple pie, the air thickened with unspoken accusations. Why'd you leave like that, son? Mr. Harrison finally asked. Fort paused. Jordan met his gaze steadily. I was scared, sir. Of feelings I didn't understand. But Alex, he saved me, even when I ran. The room fell silent. Then Mrs. Harrison reached for my hand. We failed you both. Thought love was simple. It's not. That reconciliation cracked something open in Jordan. He started opening up about the prejudices he'd faced in New York, not just the overt slurs from Wall Street bros, but the subtler ones. Colleagues assuming his bromance stories about me were straight guy nostalgia, dates ghosting when he hinted at fluidity. I thought I was straight once, he confessed one evening, as we sat on my fire escape watching fireworks over the lake. But you? You were the exception that proved the rule wrong. I leaned against him, heart pounding. And now, he turned, cupping my face gently. Now, I think I'm just yours, if you'll have me. It wasn't all fireworks. Misunderstandings crept in like fog off the lake. One night, after a gallery opening where a client flirted shamelessly with me, a charming photographer named Riley, Jordan withdrew, staring at his phone like it held state secrets. You seemed cozy, he muttered when I pressed. Jealousy, raw and unfamiliar for him. I laughed it off at first, but it stung. Riley's just a friend. Like how Miko's yours. Trust doesn't come pre-packaged, Jordan. We argued then, voices rising in the hallway. Neighbors probably pressing glasses to walls. You vanished once. How do I know this isn't round two? I shouted, the words I'd bottled for years erupting. He recoiled, then pulled me into a fierce hug. Because I'm fighting for us now. No more running. Our friends became the glue. Lena hosted a game night, Monopoly with a queer twist, where get-out-of-jail-free cards were relabeled Came Out Alive. Theo brought his guitar, strumming folk tunes about lost boys finding their way. Jordan fit in, his dry humor earning laughs, but I caught him watching me sometimes, like I might dissolve if he blinked. One evening, Miko flew in for a visit, her sequined dress turning heads on the L train. Over rooftop margaritas, she grilled Jordan. What's your damage, white boy? Why'd you break my boy's heart? He didn't flinch. Ignorance. Fear. But love? That's what dragged me back. She nodded approval, then pulled me aside. He's real, Alex. Scared shitless, but real. As winter edged in, with its first snow dusting the city like powdered sugar, the conflicts deepened. Jordan's firm transferred him to Chicago. Fate or design, he wouldn't say, but old habits died hard. He'd cancel plans last minute for work, echoes of his avoidance. I confronted him after a missed dinner, rain slicking the streets again. Is this too much? Us. He grabbed my coat, pulling me under the awning. No, it's everything. But what if I screw it up again? Vulnerability poured out, his voice cracking. We stood there, foreheads touching, as passers-by hurried on. Then we fix it, I said. Together. The real storm hit in February, when a letter arrived from Iowa. Pastor Reynolds, retired but unrepentant, had heard whispers through the grapevine. Sodom's shadow falls on the Harrisons' doorstep. It read, railing against unnatural bonds and urging us to seek repentance. Jordan crumpled it, fury blazing. He doesn't get to touch this. But it did touch us, stirring doubts, dredging up buried prejudices. That night, we drove to the lake's edge, ice cracking underfoot like fragile resolve. Remember the bonfires? I asked, evoking summers by the fire pit, roasting marshmallows and sharing dreams. He nodded, eyes distant. You said we'd conquer the world. I believed you. Then, softer. I still do. We burned the letter there, flames licking the paper as wind howled. It was cathartic, but the ashes scattered doubts. Jordan pulled away again, throwing himself into work while I buried in designs, brochures for pride events that felt ironic. Lena noticed first. Talk to him, dummy. Or lose him to his own head. Theo added, over coffee. Prejudice isn't just out there. It's the voice saying you don't deserve this. I cornered Jordan at his sleek downtown office, glass walls reflecting our tension. We're better than this ghost, I said. He looked up from his desk, exhausted. Am I? After everything. I crossed to him, taking his hands. You're here. That's the win. Spring thawed us slowly. We joined a support group for queer folks with family baggage, sharing stories in a circle of folding chairs. Jordan spoke haltingly at first, about the foster system's cold shuffle, the ache of unspoken love. Others nodded, their own tales weaving solidarity. One woman, Elena, shared how her sister had disowned her, only to return years later with apologies. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, she said. It's choosing. Jordan squeezed my knee under the table, a silent vow. By summer, surprises bloomed. Jordan proposed a road trip, back to Iowa, but on our terms. We camped by the Mississippi, stars thick as memories. Around the fire, he pulled out a faded photo. Us at 16, arms slung casual, grins wide. This was when I knew, he said. But fear won. I traced his jaw. Fear lost tonight. We kissed then, soft and sure, the river murmuring approval. No rush, no heat, just the quiet certainty of home. Yet climax loomed. In July, Mr. Harrison called, voice grave, your brother's in town. The pastor's stirring trouble. Jordan's bio dad, long absent, had surfaced, drawn by rumors, demanding a real son, untainted. He cornered Jordan at the diner, Bible-thumping venom. You're a disgrace. Jordan stood tall. I'm loved. That's grace enough. But the encounter rattled him, unlocking floods, nights of pacing, questions of worth. I held him through it, whispering, you're enough. Always were. The breaking point came at a family barbecue, Harrison's backyard buzzing with awkward kin. Pastor Reynolds showed, uninvited, sermonizing from the porch. Jordan snapped, voice steady. Love isn't sin. It's salvation. Chaos erupted. Shouts, tears, but we stood together, hands linked. Mrs. Harrison silenced the room. My boys are family. End of story. The pastor slunk away, defeated. In the aftermath, growth solidified. Jordan quit his firm, joining my business, designs for queer nonprofits, his analytical eye sharpening our edge. Friendships deepened. Group hikes with Lena and Theo, brunches with Miko via video. Prejudices faded, not gone, but confronted. One October evening, 10 years to the day, we returned to that coffee shop. Rain pattered outside, but inside, warmth reigned. Jordan slid a box across the table, a simple ring, silver with engraved waves. Not a proposal, a promise. If you meant it then, I mean it now. Tears blurred my yes, our hands clasping fully at last. Life isn't fairy tale, it's messy, profound. But in each other's eyes, we saw the story we'd always written. Love, fierce and enduring, conquering the night.